In the Talmud, some figures appear only briefly, but spark major debates. Jacob of Kafar or Jacob the Heretic is one of them. He's not a central character with a detailed backstory, but rather a symbol of dissent, labelled a term for heretic or sectarian. The rabbis used this label for Jews whose beliefs diverged sharply from rabbinic norms, especially those linked to the early Christian movement. Jacob's stories forced the sages to confront the boundaries of their community and the meaning of authentic tradition. In the Talmud, heretic isn't just a difference of opinion, it's a challenge to rabbinic authority itself. Jacob is less a historical figure and more a literary archetype, a tool for exploring the anxieties of a community in transition after the destruction of the Second Temple. The rabbis, rebuilding Judaism around Torah and law, saw figures like Jacob as representing rival visions for the future. His presence in the text sparks debates about identity, boundaries, and the dangers of theological diversity. The stories about him are legal and moral dramas, not just anecdotes. Through Jacob, the rabbis clarify what they stand for by defining what they stand against. He embodies the struggle over Jewish identity and the response to internal dissent. These tales are as much about the rabbis' own fears and hopes as they are about Jacob himself. In studying Jacob, we glimpse the intellectual and spiritual struggles that shaped rabbinic Judaism. Jacob the Heretic appears most vividly as a healer, but his cures come with a catch. In one story, Rabbi Eliezer ben Dama is bitten by a snake. Jacob offers to heal him using an incantation in the name of Yeshu ben Pandera, an allusion to Jesus. Rabbi Ishmael forbids the cure, insisting it's better to die faithful than to accept help rooted in heresy. Eliezer dies, and Ishmael declares his soul pure for refusing the heretical remedy. Another story features Rabbi Abahu, whose companions prevent a heretic from healing his leg, fearing it would give legitimacy to the sect. These stories aren't just about medicine, they're about the price of crossing theological boundaries. The snake bite and the afflicted leg symbolize spiritual crises, and Jacob's offer is a tempting but dangerous shortcut. The rabbi's refusal isn't a rejection of healing, but a statement about authority and legitimacy. Accepting Jacob's help would blur the lines between rabbinic Judaism and the movement he represents. For the sages, even life itself can't justify compromising core beliefs. These tales dramatize the tension between survival and faith. The message: some boundaries must never be crossed, no matter the cost. The story of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus and Jacob the Heretic is a psychological and theological drama. Arrested by the Romans on suspicion of heresy, Rabbi Eliezer cleverly tells the governor, "I trust the judge," meaning God, but is acquitted because the governor thinks he means him. Despite his release, Eliezer is tormented, convinced he's being punished for some hidden sin. Rabbi Akiva suggests he once found pleasure in a heretical teaching. Eliezer recalls Jacob sharing a novel interpretation in the name of Yeshu HaNotzri, which he secretly enjoyed. This fleeting intellectual sympathy, he believes, is the reason for his ordeal. The story warns that even private appreciation of heretical ideas can have profound consequences. It's a cautionary tale about the seductive power of forbidden wisdom. For the rabbis, intellectual purity is as vital as practical observance. The narrative underscores the dangers of crossing even mental boundaries. The refusal to accept healing from Jacob the Heretic is rooted in the rabbinic principle of building a fence around the Torah. This means creating extra safeguards to prevent even accidental violations of core commandments, especially against idolatry. Accepting a heretic's help could be seen as endorsing their beliefs or fostering dangerous emotional ties. The rabbis feared that gratitude toward a heretic could lead to spiritual drift. Their public rejection of Jacob's aid was a dramatic act of boundary-making. The tragic death of Eliezer ben Dama highlights the seriousness of this stance. For the rabbis, protecting communal integrity sometimes meant making the ultimate sacrifice. The term heresy was a flexible label for internal dissenters, especially Jewish followers of Jesus. Stories about Jacob the Heretic helped define what counted as and set legal precedents for dealing with it. The rabbis used these tales to establish rules. Don't accept healing, don't do business, don't read their books, don't debate. Defining was central to consolidating rabbinic Judaism after the temple's destruction. The label was a tool for drawing sharp lines between acceptable and unacceptable beliefs. It was an act of power, shaping communal identity by defining the other. But the term reflected rabbinic perspective, not necessarily how the labeled saw themselves. The stories reveal a struggle over the very definition of Judaism. They are artifacts of a battle for authority and legitimacy. Scholars have long debated whether the Talmud's references to Yeshu HaNotzri or Yeshu ben Pandera point directly to Jesus of Nazareth. While traditional views try to distance these figures from Christianity, modern scholarship sees them as polemical references to Jesus. The rabbis used these names to reject Christian claims while acknowledging their influence. The teaching Jacob shares with Rabbi Eliezer, a clever interpretation of Scripture, has no clear New Testament parallel, but its foreignness is the point. The stories are less about historical accuracy and more about drawing boundaries. They're rhetorical weapons in a war of ideas, not objective history. The references to Jesus ground the abstract concept of heresy in the reality of a growing Christian movement. The debate is about the nature and purpose of rabbinic polemic. The Talmudic stories about Jacob and Jesus faced intense scrutiny in medieval Europe. Christian authorities targeted these passages as evidence of anti-Christian sentiment, leading to widespread censorship. Jewish communities and printers removed or altered sensitive references. Yeshu became that man, and Min was changed to less controversial terms. Entire stories vanished from printed editions, leaving gaps in the text. This censorship was a survival strategy, but it obscured the original debates for centuries. Only rare manuscripts preserved the uncensored versions. Their modern recovery has revolutionized Talmudic scholarship, revealing the full force of rabbinic engagement with early Christianity. The history of censorship shows how texts are shaped by the pressures of their time. Today, scholars approach the stories of Jacob the Heretic as crafted literary works, not simple history. These tales were tools for shaping rabbinic identity and drawing boundaries with the emerging Christian movement. In the 2nd century, Jews and Christians were still closely intertwined, making the need for clear lines urgent. The stories reflect real anxieties in a diverse Roman world, where religious boundaries were constantly tested. Modern scholarship also highlights internal rabbinic debates. Figures like Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva represent different visions for Judaism's future. The narratives are as much about internal struggles as external threats. They offer a window into the dynamic, contentious world of the sages. By analysing these stories, we better understand how religious communities define themselves. The tales remain vital for exploring the process of identity formation. The stories of Jacob the Heretic capture a pivotal moment in Jewish-Christian relations, when boundaries were still fluid. Jewish followers of Jesus posed a unique challenge because they were so similar to other Jews. The rabbis responded by insisting on sharp separation. No benefit, not even healing, could cross the divide. This was about transforming a spectrum of beliefs into a binary choice, with the rabbis or with the minim. The conflict centered on authority, who could interpret Torah and lead the people. These tales are crucial documents in the parting of the ways between Judaism and Christianity. They show the separation was gradual, driven by legal rulings and polemical stories. Through Jacob, we see the rabbinic side of this historic split. The debates around Jacob the Heretic may seem distant, but they remain deeply relevant. At their heart, these stories are about how communities define themselves by drawing boundaries against the other. This process is universal, shaping religious, national, and political identities throughout history. The tales force us to confront the costs of uncompromising dogmatism and the dangers of rejecting our shared humanity. The history of censorship and rediscovery reminds us that texts are shaped by power and politics. Recovering the original stories allows for a more honest understanding of Jewish-Christian relations. These narratives challenge both faiths to grapple with their difficult shared past. Ultimately, the stories endure because they dramatize the tension between tradition and innovation, community and conscience. They show how religious identities are forged and defended under pressure. By studying them, we gain insight into the enduring struggles that shape religious life.